Alright, so I'm here in my room. I've got my computer on in front of me. I've got my microphone set up. My notepad is open with some notes about my podcast. It's time to rewind. Looks like they're open to the 36th scene of Memento that starts in black and white at 77 minutes and 12 seconds, with Leonard grabbing a glass to listen at the wall to the next room, and ends at 77 minutes and 46 seconds with Leonard shutting the door in Burt's face. Oh, hang on. Who is this?
Bubba, it's Lisa Leaheey from Rabbit Hole Podcasts. We've got that new podcast called Pictures and Conversations. It's a Rabbit Hole Podcast book club. Come on, you know who I am.
Oh, of course. I always seem to forget, but I do prefer to be called Bubbawheat. And who are you?
I'm Eric Nash, again from Watchmen Minute, but you may also remember Almost Famous Minute and Feels Like Weezer.
Oh, of course. It's good to have you back. And we talked about this just briefly, in between episodes, but this whole group is really not a whole lot to it. They're all, all the black and white scenes are fairly short, except for a couple of really good chunky ones. And, this is another just 30-second scene. I think we do get a little bit more here. I do like how, again, this is very frantic opening, which I think really, I mentioned it last week, but this really ties into the scene right before it with Natalie's big, 180 character turn.
Oh, some of the best stuff in this movie. And it's great because when I show it to my students, more often than not, that's the end of day 2. Because, the class period ends. I can't do anything about it. And they hate it. They're like, what are you doing turning that off? I said, you guys got to go to class. Sorry. What? They get all crazy. It's fantastic. Guarantees they come in the next day to finish it off.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh, it's so great. They get so angry. Oh, they get so angry at her. Some of them are like, I knew it. She's awful. Da 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 da. And they're throwing all kinds of words out there. It's very entertaining. Gotta love seniors in high school.
Yeah, and Leonard's very frantic, and he's doing this very well known trick of just putting the glass to the wall to hear next door. Although I don't fully understand. I went back and forth a couple times, but I don't get why do you think that he's listening next door? Did either of you catch any sort of clue that makes him think that maybe there's somebody in the room next door?
I think it's just the paranoia. I think it's just trying to figure out, is there somebody there? Is somebody listening to him? Is somebody watching him? I think he's just in a panic and he's grasping at straws. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, that's actually the one other kind of little bit of a note I had from the last episode was paranoia. That was definitely increasing. Hey, and anyone that does put a glass to a wall probably is suffering a bit from paranoia.
Either that or boredom.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That's earlier on, whenever with Dot in the closet and Teddy's in the room, and and he says,
amorous
neighbors.
Yeah, and the way he's sitting in the chair in that scene too it does seem like he's kind of a little bit bored as well.
And I did look this up. I know that it's a real thing, and it's something that is kind of a cliche thing that we see in movies and TVs. But this is one of the cases where it's cliche because it actually does work. And listening through the wall with a glass, and it's an effect called acoustic coupling between the wall and the glass.
While you listen for other kinds of coupling.
Exactly, but it does amplify the wall. That's the vibrations coming through the wall, and it does help to check at different parts of the wall, because some parts of the wall can capture the sound waves better than other parts. So you might get a better listen in a different part of the wall. And I do think that it's funny too, but especially with what we're talking about now, whenever he hears the knock at the door. And it's almost like he was listening to his motel neighbors having sex, and he tosses the glass into the end table drawer and puts his shirt on to go answer the door.
I love it. Like he's been caught.
And I also think it's kind of funny because since he does throw it into the drawer, that means that he's gonna, I feel like that he'll be confused the next time that he, has his moment where he checks all the drawers and then he finds this random glass inside the drawer and wonders, what's this doing there? And then we get this, I think this is a great scene with him talking to Burt, like through the door. It's framed almost as if he had like one of the chains attached to the door, even though there isn't the physical chain there. But he is holding it just like a little bit wider than that, just enough to frame each of their faces from the different camera angles, which is great.
And it's so perfect. Bert's trying to peek in and he can't really see. And he's like, oh, well, you got to talk to this guy. And at the same time, he's lifting his chin, seeing if he could see up and around Leonard. I love Mark Boone Jr. I just think he's such a great character actor. Just like I said, the kind of guy you want to sit around and, have a cigar with and just listen to him tell stories. But he just, I don't know, his subtleties are wonderful because they're so not subtle in this particular scene.
Absolutely.
You're talking about framing now the thing in watching this, in the minute by minute or segment by segment type of format, it definitely is, it threw me definitely in it was just my watch last night with my fiance. And it was, there was definitely one other spot where I saw something similar to this, but it wasn't this. But this, watching it repeatedly, it's his head in the door from Bert's view is definitely very much there, kind of between the door and the frame. Whereas in the view of Burt, towards Burt, his head definitely isn't that far forward. But,
right.
I totally get why it's done and why Nolan and his people would choose to overlook it. It works so well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's a matter of getting what they want to show on screen versus how it would realistically be framed, because if he did have his head that close to the frame, then you wouldn't be able to see Burt at all through the camera angle.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But those are one of those forgivable mistakes, especially from my perspective. And I also think that it, especially with how nervous and anxious that Leonard is, you really get the sense that he's trapped in this room at this point.
Definitely. Well, he's got somebody calling him incessantly. He's got God knows who on the other side of the wall. He's got Burt coming at him from the front door. Absolutely he's trapped. I think that's a great point.
Well, I almost feel like he's also in a way trapped because he is able to keep not really keep his focus, but he's certainly trying to get a task done of the tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
So, fine.
And the other thing that I noticed is, especially in this scene, and after he finally puts the flannel shirt on, because he's been shirtless through most of this black and white scene, is that he really looks very different. Just, with his unshaven scruffiness and his face and the flannel shirt and just the kind of, especially this disheveled, anxious look, feels miles away from the clean shaven, cream suit, put together guy that we see
driving the Jag.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this is really only a difference of just a couple days.
I think it's 1 day, isn't it? I think it's only 1, maybe 2 at most.
I think the color scenes go through 3 days.
Okay.
Because they have him sleeping there's at least 2 overnights.
Okay, that's fair. It's been a while since I've really paid attention to I mean, I've paid attention to the scenes themselves, but I haven't been tracking them as far as daytimes go. And I know that he has an overnight with Natalie. Yeah, that's a good point.
And then he also has the overnight with the escort. I mean, it's not an overnight with the escort,
right.
but yeah.
You're right. Yep. See, this is why you're the host and I'm just a co-host.
And again, this is, him talking face to face, saying that he's no good over the phone, and he needs to look people in the eye whenever he talks to them, which is, a nice callback to the earlier scenes whenever he talks about how he works as the insurance adjuster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those couple overnights are definitely something I was kind of paying more attention to than I had ever previously. I'm pretty sure in the whole watch I did, and because kind of coming into this and knowing I was going to do this is that I was like, I mean, I couldn't remember, is everything kind of real time? Are there essentially no? I mean, it's not that there's no cuts, but there's no time lapses within any one segment, but there are. It seems like quite a bit. So, I mean, the length of his amnesia, anterior retrograde amnesia, really does seem to be, it could easily be a good half hour, maybe, very roughly. But
yeah.
Quite often there's enough of a time jump within, or two or three times sometimes, I feel, in some cases.
And I think that's definitely helpful for us, because otherwise it would just be like we would lose track of time and it would be way too disorienting for us.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting, like I'm sure I've said it before, but for me it feels like it's been a while, but I think it's worth noting that all of the black and white scenes together take place over just a few hours, while all the color scenes take place over about 3 days.
Mm.
So there's like a big difference between the amount of time that we're seeing passing through the black and white scenes versus the amount of time passing that we're seeing through the color scenes, even though they're cut back and forth, more or less equally in terms of cuts, even though, again, the black and white scenes are much shorter than the color scenes.
Now, I've been listening to some of your first episodes, that it did seem like, I think I caught you saying that you had watched the going through in order, in normal chronological order of all the scenes. Bubbawheat, that you did, but Lisa, you didn't.
Nope.
But like, are the black and white scenes still black and white in that?
Yeah, the black and white scenes are like it is literally just the exact same movie. It's just the scenes are cut different. The scenes are placed in order, or in chronological order versus movie order. But other than that, so you do get a lot of repetitions whenever you get to the color scenes, because they show the repetitiveness whenever you're watching the color scenes back to back in chronological order versus movie order. And that's like, I definitely agree that it makes for a less entertaining movie experience.
Yeah.
But it is interesting as like a special feature. Just a 2-hour special feature. One little random thing that I just noticed, just because it happens to be paused on the screen, I see that his door to his hotel room has actually two spots for the chains to hook into, but you don't see the chains attached to the door frame.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's 2 spots for chains to hook into, but there's no visible chains.
They take them off, maybe?
Yeah, or they were like broken off because it's a seedy motel, so the door's probably being kicked in.
That's a great point. Oh, I love that. I want to see God. Now I wish that was in the commentary. Couldn't somebody did he do that? Good old Nolan and his crazy details. Did they do that with that whole point, to prove that it's a seedy motel, or is this just, a door that they didn't get the chain for? Or, that's going to every year I show this now, I'm going to be thinking about that.
Because there is a little curtain that he pulls back.
Yes.
That's, right next to the door frame. And I the quality's not good enough for me to see if there's like the screw holes, but there's just like a slight discoloration where like one of the chains might have been, but other than that, I don't really see any evidence that a chain ever was there. It's at least at this quality that I'm looking at here.
Yeah, that's one of those kinds of hotel motel situations I would nope right out of. if I got a room, it's like okay.
But do either of you have anything else for this scene?
Ooh,
Nope.
I think I covered it for me.
All right. Well, thank you once again, Eric, for joining us for these 4 weeks here. And once again, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to let everybody else know where else they can find you online?
Last time I mentioned my 3 podcasts, but I'll just give out some socials, so forth. On most social platforms, I'm known as Lucky Mustard, so you can find me that way possibly, or Lucky Mustardine even on Instagram. But and I have those shows on the socials as well. So hey, just check them out. Almost Famous Minute being the one I'd highlight today.
All right. And as always, thank you, Lisa, for joining me through this entire season. It's been a fun ride so far, and we're almost done.
It really has. I'm going to miss it once we finish.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show on It's Time to Rewind on all the available podcatchers. If we're not available on the podcatcher that you listen to, just let me know, and I will do what I can to get it added to that one as well. And we also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to get notified of future seasons, like what we're going to be covering in the future. You can discuss episodes as they come out, and you can have discussions about other time loop movies and TV shows that we haven't yet covered or we have already covered. It's all welcome there. And as always, have I already told you about Memento?
Oh, only every time I see you.
Burt, from the front desk.